There is a strange tragedy that unfolds in countless lives. People spend years searching for peace. They move to new cities, change careers, end relationships, start new ones, read books, listen to teachers, travel across the world. Yet despite all their efforts, the peace they seek remains elusive, like a horizon that retreats with every step forward. The reason is often simpler than they imagine. Peace is rarely destroyed by dramatic events. It is eroded by habits. Small habits, invisible habits, repeated habits, patterns of thought and behavior practiced so frequently that they become part of one's identity. Marcus Aurelius understood this deeply. He knew that the greatest threats to tranquility were not external enemies, not political turmoil, not economic uncertainty, not even death itself. The greatest threats lived within. They appeared in the form of daily mental habits that quietly poison the soul. Most people never notice them because they feel normal. They have practiced them for so long that they mistake them for reality. Yet these habits slowly steal joy from ordinary moments. They turn blessings into burdens. They transform opportunities into anxieties. They make life heavier than it needs to be. Imagine carrying stones inside a backpack. At first, the weight seems insignificant. One stone changes little. Neither does two or three. But year after year, more stones are added. Eventually, the burden becomes exhausting. Not because any single stone was heavy, because of their accumulation. Inner peace disappears in much the same way. Not through one catastrophic mistake, but through repeated patterns that slowly weigh down the mind. The first habit is living in constant comparison. Comparison is one of the oldest forms of suffering, and one of the most common. Somewhere along the way, people stop experiencing life directly. Instead, they begin measuring it. Their success against another person's success. Their appearance against another person's appearance. Their achievements against another person's achievements. Their happiness against another person's happiness. The result is predictable. Nothing ever feels enough. Because comparison transforms abundance into scarcity. A person can possess health, meaningful work, loving relationships, and financial stability, yet feel miserable because someone else appears to have more. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself that each person follows a different path. Different circumstances, different challenges, different destinies. The oak tree does not compete with the river. The river does not compete with the mountain. Nature functions harmoniously because each thing fulfills its own purpose. Only human beings insist on measuring their worth against lives they were never meant to live. And so peace disappears. Not because life lacks blessings, but because attention remains fixed on what belongs to someone else. The second habit is replaying the past. The mind becomes a courtroom, a battlefield, a museum of regrets. Old conversations are replayed endlessly. Mistakes are examined repeatedly. Embarrassments are resurrected. Failures are relived. The event ended years ago. Yet mentally, the person continues experiencing it. Again, and again, and again. The Stoics understood that memory can become a prison. Not because the past is inherently painful, because attachment to the past prevents engagement with the present. There is a peculiar cruelty in punishing yourself for mistakes that no longer exist. The past cannot be changed, only learned from. Yet countless people sacrifice today's peace trying to rewrite yesterday's events. The lesson remains ignored while the suffering continues. Wisdom requires something different. Acceptance, not approval, not denial. Acceptance, the recognition that what happened has happened. The only meaningful question is what will be done now. The third habit is worrying about things beyond your control. Perhaps no habit destroys peace more efficiently. A person worries about the economy, about politics, about the weather, about aging, about what others think. about future possibilities that may never occur. Hours become days. Days become years. Entire lives disappear into imagined scenarios. And yet the object of concern remains unaffected. Though worry changes nothing. Marcus Aurelius repeatedly returned to one central distinction. What belongs to you? And what does not? Your actions belong to you. Your character belongs to you. Your choices belong to you. The future does not. Other people do not. Fortune does not. Chance does not. The moment attention becomes trapped in uncontrollable territory, peace begins slipping away. Like water leaking through open fingers. The mind becomes exhausted trying to manage realities it was never designed to control. And exhaustion eventually becomes anxiety. Anxiety becomes fear. Fear becomes suffering. All because energy was invested where influence did not exist. And exhaustion eventually becomes anxiety. Anxiety becomes fear. Fear becomes suffering. All because energy was invested where influence did not exist. The fourth habit is seeking validation from others. This habit disguises itself as something harmless. After all, every human being desires acceptance. Every human being appreciates encouragement. Every human being enjoys praise. The danger begins when approval transforms from a pleasant experience into a necessity. When self-worth becomes dependent upon external recognition. When confidence requires constant reinforcement. When identity depends upon public reaction. The person trapped in this habit becomes emotionally vulnerable to every opinion. Praise creates temporary happiness. Criticism creates disproportionate pain. Rejection becomes devastating. Disagreement feels personal. Life turns into an endless negotiation with strangers. Marcus Aurelius understood the fragility of such a life. He ruled an empire filled with people who praised him one day and criticized him the next. He knew that public opinion shifts like wind. To anchor peace in something so unstable is to guarantee instability. There is immense freedom in realizing that your worth does not increase when people admire you, nor decrease when they do not. The sun does not shine more brightly because someone praises it, nor does it become dimmer because someone ignores it. Its nature remains unchanged. The Stoic seeks the same stability. A value rooted in character rather than applause. A confidence rooted in virtue rather than recognition. A peace rooted internally rather than externally. Because approval is a poor foundation for a meaningful life. It demands constant maintenance, constant performance, constant adjustment, and eventually, the person seeking approval forgets who they truly are. The fifth habit is resentment. Resentment is a peculiar burden. It feels as though it harms others. Yet it quietly harms the one carrying it. Imagine holding a burning coal with their intention of throwing it at someone else. The longer you hold it, the more damage it causes. This is resentment. A person hurts you, betrays you, disappoints you, and the event itself may last minutes. Yet resentment extends the suffering for years, sometimes decades. The offender may move on completely, yet the injured person continues reliving the pain, again and again, each memory reopening the wound, each recollection renewing the suffering. Seneca warned that anger and resentment often punish the victim more severely than the original offense. Because resentment keeps the past alive. It grants permanent residence to temporary pain. The Stoics never suggested pretending injuries never happened. Nor did they advocate passivity. They advocated liberation. Their refusal to allow another person's actions to permanently occupy your inner world. Forgiveness in the Stoic sense is not always about the other person. It is about reclaiming your own peace. It is about removing the poison from your own mind. Because carrying resentment through life is like dragging chains across a long journey. The weight becomes exhausting. The freedom becomes impossible. And peace becomes increasingly distant. The sixth habit is filling every moment with noise. Modern life has perfected distraction. Silence has become rare. The moment boredom appears, stimulation arrives. A screen, a notification, a conversation, a headline, a video, a constant stream of information. Many people spend years avoiding solitude without realizing it. Because solitude forces an encounter with oneself. And that encounter can feel uncomfortable. In silence, unresolved fears emerge. Unanswered questions emerge. Unhealed wounds emerge. The noise helps conceal them, at least temporarily. Yet Marcus Aurelius repeatedly sought moments of inward retreat. Not because he hated the world, because he understood that inner clarity requires stillness. The mind resembles a lake. When constantly disturbed, the surface becomes chaotic. Reflections become distorted. Depth becomes invisible. Only stillness reveals what lies beneath. Many people complain that they cannot find peace. Yet they never allow themselves enough silence to hear it. They fill every waking moment with activity, then wonder why their thoughts remain unsettled. Wisdom often arrives quietly, not during noise, not during distraction, but during moments when the mind finally becomes still enough to listen. The final habit is forgetting mortality. This may seem strange. How could remembering death create peace? Yet Marcus Aurelius considered this awareness essential. Because mortality places everything into perspective. The person who remembers death thinks differently. Petty arguments lose importance. Temporary embarrassments lose importance. Public opinion loses importance. Trivial worries lose importance. The awareness of life's finite nature acts like a cleansing fire. It burns away illusions. It exposes priorities. It reminds us that time is precious, not infinite. Each day becomes more meaningful because it is limited. Each conversation becomes more valuable because it may not return. Each sunrise becomes more beautiful because it cannot be repeated forever. Those who forget mortality often live as though there will always be more time. More opportunities, more chances, more tomorrows, and so they postpone what matters. They delay peace, delay gratitude, delay courage, delay living. But reality offers no guarantees. The Stoics understood this, which is why they treated mortality not as an enemy, but as a teacher that reminds us what deserves attention and what deserves release. When these 7 habits begin losing their grip, something remarkable happens. Life itself does not necessarily change. The world remains uncertain. People remain imperfect. Challenges remain unavoidable. Yet the inner experience becomes different. Lighter, clearer, calmer. The burden of comparison weakens. The chains of regret loosen. The anxiety of control fades. The hunger for validation softens. The poison of resentment dissolves. The addiction to noise quiets. The illusion of endless time disappears. And beneath all these layers, something that was always present begins to emerge. A peace that does not depend upon circumstances. A peace that does not depend upon success. A peace that does not depend upon approval. A peace rooted in wisdom itself. The kind of peace Marcus Aurelius carried through war. The kind of peace Seneca carried through uncertainty. The kind of peace Epictetus carried despite hardship. Not because life became easy, because they learned how to stop fighting reality. And once a person stops fighting reality, reality ceases to feel like an enemy. It becomes a teacher, a guide, a path, and perhaps that is where true inner peace begins. Not in the absence of difficulty, not in perfect circumstances, not in a life free from disappointment, criticism, loss, or uncertainty. Peace begins when resistance ends. When the endless struggle against reality finally softens. When the mind stops demanding that life be different before it allows itself to rest. For many years, people tell themselves a story. They say they will be at peace when certain conditions are met. When they have more money. When they find the right relationship. when they retire, when they receive recognition, when they solve every problem, when they finally feel secure. Yet life quietly reveals the flaw in this thinking. The conditions keep changing. The destination keeps moving. The peace remains postponed, like a traveler forever chasing a horizon. Marcus Aurelius understood something most people spend a lifetime learning. Peace is not waiting at the end of the journey. Peace is the manner in which the journey is walked. Because if the mind cannot be peaceful now, it will rarely become peaceful later. The habits remain. The fears remain. The attachments remain. Only the scenery changes. This is why wisdom begins within. Not because external circumstances are unimportant, but because they are incomplete. A beautiful environment cannot quiet an undisciplined mind. A successful career cannot heal a restless spirit. Public admiration cannot comfort a troubled conscience. The world can offer comfort. It cannot provide inner freedom. That work belongs to you. And perhaps this realization feels uncomfortable at first, because it removes excuses. It removes the fantasy that someone else will eventually save us. The fantasy that peace will arrive from outside. The fantasy that happiness can be delivered like a gift. The Stoics offered something both harder and more empowering. Responsibility. Not responsibility for everything. Only responsibility for yourself. For your judgments. Your reactions. Your choices. Your character. The territory that genuinely belongs to you. And within that territory lies extraordinary power. Because while you cannot control events, you can control your relationship with events. You cannot control loss, but you can control whether loss becomes bitterness. You cannot control criticism, but you can control whether criticism becomes suffering. You cannot control aging, but you can control whether aging becomes wisdom. You cannot control mortality, but you can control whether mortality becomes fear or clarity. This distinction changes everything. The person who understands it stops feeling like a victim of circumstances. They begin acting like a steward of their own mind. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, life becomes lighter. Not because burdens disappear, because unnecessary burdens are finally released. The burden of comparison, released. The burden of resentment, released. The burden of constant approval seeking, released. The burden of controlling the uncontrollable, released. The burden of carrying yesterday into today, released. What remains is something remarkably simple. Presence. The ability to inhabit the current moment without being dragged backward by regret or pushed forward by fear. Most people underestimate the power of presence. Yet presence is where life actually occurs. Not in memories, not in imagination, not in hypothetical futures. Only here, only now. Every meaningful experience unfolds within this moment. Every act of courage, every expression of gratitude, every opportunity to love, every opportunity to grow. Life itself exists only in the present. Yet countless people spend their lives somewhere else. Mentally absent, emotionally divided, spiritually distracted. The Stoics sought to return again and again to the present moment. Not because the present was perfect, because it was real. And reality is the only place where virtue can be practiced. The only place where peace can be experienced. The only place where freedom can be found. There comes a point when a person begins seeing life differently. Not as a problem to solve, but as a reality to participate in. Not as a battle to win, but as a journey to walk with dignity. Not as something owed to them, but as something entrusted to them. This perspective creates profound gratitude. Gratitude not because life is easy, but because life is temporary. The awareness of mortality sharpens appreciation. A sunset becomes more beautiful. A conversation becomes more meaningful. A quiet morning becomes more precious. Even ordinary moments begin revealing extraordinary depth. Because the wise person understands something the restless mind forgets. Nothing is guaranteed. Everything is borrowed. Time, health, relationships, opportunities, even life itself. All temporary, all passing, and strangely, this realization does not create despair. It creates reverence. It inspires a deeper commitment to living fully. Not recklessly, not selfishly, but consciously, deliberately, with awareness. Marcus Aurelius often reflected upon how quickly generations disappear. People arrive, live, struggle, love, dream, fear, hope, then eventually vanish into history. The same fate awaits all of us. Kings and laborers, scholars and merchants, the admired and the forgot, the celebrated and the criticized. Time treats everyone equally. And because of this, many of the things that disturb us lose their importance. The insult, the embarrassment, the opinions, the comparison, the rivalry, the fear, viewed against the vastness of existence, these things shrink dramatically. What remains significant is character. How you treated people. How you handled adversity. How honestly you lived. How courageously you acted. How faithfully you followed your conscience. These are the things that matter. These are the things that endure. Not in memories, not in reputation, but in the quality of the life itself. And perhaps this is the final lesson hidden beneath all Stoic wisdom. Inner peace is not something you acquire. It is something you uncover. It has been there all along. Beneath the comparison, beneath the resentment, beneath the fear, beneath the need for approval, beneath the endless noise. Like a clear sky hidden behind passing clouds. The clouds move. The sky remains. The disturbances come and go. The deeper self remains. Strong, steady, unshaken. This is the inner citadel Marcus Aurelius described. The place within that no external event can fully invade. The place where dignity survives loss. Where wisdom survives uncertainty. Where character survives criticism. Where peace survives change. Every human being possesses this place. Yet few spend time cultivating it. Most spend their lives trying to control the world outside. The Stoic chooses another path. They cultivate the world within. And as that inner world becomes stronger, external chaos loses its power. The storms still arrive, but they no longer destroy. The waves still rise, but they no longer overwhelm. Life still changes, but peace remains. Not perfect peace, not permanent peace, but a resilient peace. A peace capable of enduring reality. A peace capable of facing mortality. A peace capable of meeting life exactly as it is. And in the quiet moments when the noise fades and the mind finally settles, a simple truth emerges. You do not need a different life to experience peace. You need a different relationship with life. The moment that relationship changes, everything changes. The world remains the same. Yet you become free. And perhaps that freedom is the greatest gift philosophy can offer. Not certainty, not comfort, not guarantees. Freedom, the freedom to live with courage. The freedom to accept reality. The freedom to release what cannot be controlled. The freedom to focus on what truly matters. The freedom to walk through life with a calm mind, a grateful heart, and an unshakable sense of purpose. And in that freedom, peace finally stops being something you chase. It becomes something you carry.